Fantastic, Brandon. Yeah, I remember my first introduction to 3D printing was a guy in the local area around Detroit here who had an EOS machine. They was selective laser sintering, and he also did bronze, stainless, and a tool steel. He actually bought it for a mold industry. He would make inserts complete out of his 3D printer and insert it into the mold. To circle back to your story, so you just told us that you went out on your own, made this big leap, signing on New Year's Day, and then what was it? Was it 2 or 3 years later? You said it was April Fool's Day. You were taking a look at. You were finally unemployed, is the word you put. Self-employed. A lot of them are the same. I think in Webster's dictionary, they're the synonymous with each other. But yeah, so you found yourself self-employed, Texas metal printing. And you had this family at home that have all the same habits as my family. They like to eat and they like to have a roof over their head and they like to be clothed. So you had to figure out how to provide that.
Yeah, and they want me around every once in a while for that stuff too.
Well, that's an added bonus. That's not always the case for everybody, but it's an added bonus if they like dad to be around. So how did you manage that? How did you manage these incredible challenges?
Yeah, is that like with anything else, man, that we prayed a lot about where to go with the direction of the company. Now that we're here, God, and I followed you away from the day job, where do we go now type thing? And begin to look at 3D printing. Metal 3D printing usually doesn't stand alone on its own. It can in some niche applications, but a lot of times you're using an EDM machine, you're using a milling machine, you're drilling a hole, you're polishing, sanding, grinding, something added to the additive process usually. And at the time, I had only just the one printer, and I was outsourcing a lot of machining work. And so I started to talk to my wife, okay, if we're in on this all together, what's we might need to buy an EDM machine, maybe a couple CNC machines, and get more capability under our roof now that we need to make some more money here and there instead of I just dropped my camera.
Thankfully, it's just the camera.
now we've sealed the deal that we're amateurs. All right. Anyway, start talking about that. And also being open to, we had some large clients who were excited about what we were doing and was willing to consider a sale out acquisition type situation and put it in God's hands. All right, God, you tell me. This is what we're open to. This is what we're willing to do. Whichever way comes about, that's what we'll do with. And Allied Power Group came along and we did some sample prints for them. They were really happy with the samples we provided, some proof of concept for some of the applications that they had. They wanted to get into additive manufacturing. I didn't have any equipment at the time, but didn't have any personnel dedicated to it at the time, but saw it as a technology they wanted to add to their arsenal. They're a world leader in gas turbine repair. So they do a lot of welding, a lot of machining, a lot of heat treating for the gas turbine industry. Okay. And lots of opportunities there for additive manufacturing. And so we hit it off. We really got along. They liked me and I liked them. And so as part of their capital expense into delving off into additive was the acquisition of Texas Metal Printing wholly. So they got our customer base, they got our equipment and my very limited expertise in additive. But I did have 4 years of challenges that you only get to experience once you're actually printing your own parts. And I think that's like with anything else. You buy a CNC machine, oh, that's fantastic. Make a part on it. That's a whole nother situation. You got to get your tooling and your programming and all that. And so the experience that I brought was one of the attractive things for Allied Power Group. So I've been working with them hand in hand since December of 19. At the close of 19 is when they bought our equipment, and then due to COVID, we didn't move anything until July of 2020.
Oh, nice.
And so over the course of the first half of 2020, they bought an additional 3D printer. So 2 3D printers in house now, and then over the course of 2020 altogether, we moved them in, got them all set up, and are making parts for clients as well as internal demand for gas turbine.
Yeah, and I guess we didn't cover it in the bio, but you were in the Houston, Texas area, correct?
That's right. Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay.
Allied Power Group's on the north side, and I've been in the Houston area since 2000.
Gotcha. And I know we've talked a little bit. Of course, we have to be sensitive on this podcast as a public thing, so we can't really mention customers or necessarily projects. But I do remember in some of the conversations with you when I found out you were in the Texas area, there's a certain private space company that's got its hands in Texas, and you started talking about both in your previous life doing a lot of the plate cutting and the machining at your family business. I don't know if you're still doing that with additive. I know you're own and operating now with Allied. So I don't know how many outside customers you still serve, but maybe talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, the customer service, man. Some of the best clients you pick up are at 5:05 on a Friday when everybody else has decided that they're good, they don't need the work. When you take that phone call and you're like, what? And they come up with this nearly impossible, but you can probably pull it off type task. And you hit that task you hit a home run on it. And next thing you know, you're buried with good work from a good customer.
You're getting a phone call. It's not random, right? You've proven yourself in some way or form in industry to be the guy that someone's got an issue. We got to call this guy and get this thing solved. And so it's good for me to hear like-minded people who answered the phone. So you answered the phone for the guy, and then they give you the crazy impossible. My team always laughs. So I get text messages at 10:30 on Friday night or Saturday night, and it's typically some screenshot of a model of a part, and some director or VP at some company says, "Hey, is this possible?" And my team says this isn't possible. No, and they got their finger pointing at a hole, inside, around side, and so I'll text them back. It sounds tough, and they say, "Yeah, but you can do it, right?"
Why are you asking me at 10:30 on Saturday?
Yeah, and that's what my team always says on Monday morning. We have our leadership meeting. We power, and they always say to me, "All right, what text did you get over the week? What are we working on this week?" And I say, well, this guy's got this inside, outside, around side thing. And so we kind of laugh because it's the same deal. So yeah, as we get back in there again, I know our time's running up a little bit, but sounds like you've had quite the gamut of 3D printing. And I want to look at, again, knowing you have to be sensitive to the types of things you're actually doing. Can you talk about the different uses of 3D printing, maybe some of the failures you've experienced and how to fix that? Can you look at some of those possibilities for us?
Yeah, sure. As far as applications, we've had downhole drilling applications in the field, not prototype. At the time, contributed to setting some records for this tool did this thing much faster than the competition type thing. And 3D printing additive metal was the way to do it. Like that's the way to make that part that did that thing that helped the guy set the record. To be a part of that is awesome. I can never shout it from the rooftops or use it for any advertising, which is frustrating, but it's cool. It's cool. And it really, that one project kept the lights on for us early on. So it's
awesome.
It's awesome. That's Houston, Texas. Oil is very critical to manufacturing around here. But then we've done some cool prototype stuff. One client used to always on fire. Hey, we got this presentation next week. We got this new design for some sort of concrete application. Hey, can you print this up? Like, yeah, man, sure. And no idea what it did. Usually we don't know what it is. We get a file dumped in our lap and it's like, hey, I need one of these. And we don't really get to participate much in what it does. It's the nature of, if it's a prototype, that's already hush hush. They don't really know where it's going to go. So a lot of times we see stuff that looks cool, but we have no idea. Could be a shoehorn. We wouldn't know. But then we do get a lot of exposure to aerospace, rocket stuff, and that's fun. There's some very creative engineers out there that come up with unique geometry that is challenging, to say the least. And then even here internally, Allied Power Group got a lot of components that are historically, the legacy parts would be castings to start off as a casting. Then they have to go to machining, do some machining features. Then they've got some EDM features. And then we got to do some buffing, polishing, whatever. And so castings were always a delay. They weren't perfect. When they came in, you had to address them, deal with them. They wait forever before they show up. And then machining this stuff, a lot of the gas turbine stuff is nickel, cobalt, chrome, not aluminum for machining applications. And so machining them is not trivial. It may not be difficult, but it beats up your tools. It takes time. And so we took this one component that had a brazing, machining, EDM application, and we turned it to a single off the printer application where, to be honest, it's not 100%. There's one edge on the bottom side where the support material is that has to be dusted on a mill. But it's like, instead of 8 hours in the shop, it's 30 minutes in the shop.
Wow.
Drastically reduce the labor. And obviously the printing machine doesn't care if it's 7 o'clock on Friday night or Christmas Day or whatever, as long as it was set up in advance properly and all that. It's doing its thing. And so the labor hours are shot down on that. And then these really small holes that went, from one small hole and then tapered to a big hole on the other end. Just a unique feature that was challenging with EDMs and certain types of drills and stuff that it's wanted on the printer more or less with a finished pass on the mill. And it's just exciting to see that stuff, because that's a complex part, a high value part that economically it makes sense to 3D print it, which has been, a big challenge for additive, is to take a legacy part and go, we've already got all that figured out. But there are situations where it does make sense. Usually it's your smaller parts, for us, the stuff the size of our hand, or something that cannot be done another way, like a rocket engine.
What would you consider the most complicated either material or part you've ever had to do so far?
We did it was a combustion chamber of sorts. And it was cobalt chrome material, which we've had a lot of good luck with printing. It's difficult to machine, but it's good for printing. But man, it just had this crazy geometry inside. There was these like tubular kind of funnel things. So unsupported angles, unsupported overhang, which has always got more stress. And it was there was just a lot of stuff going on there that was just really challenging. And we had some problem. We had to print it 3 or 4 times. And it was, each build was a 6-day build. So we would get 4 days in and go, start it over. We got to change this. We got to change that. And that's the agony with 3D printing, is when you scrap a high investment build that has multiple days on it.
So that leads to the next thing is, how do you quote a one-piece job that you're going to print that's never been made before? Is that really a challenge for you as well?
Yeah, of course. Onesies are hard for any process. Doesn't matter if it's 3D printing, machining, whatever it is. A onesie is difficult, especially if it's complicated, which is why it lands in our lap in the first place. If it was easy, it would have gone somewhere else. But I think with 20 years of experience, hopefully by now, I have learned to calculate for, or at least do a best guess at the factors, and take, an approach of, okay, well, we know it's going to consume this much powder. Let's say it's a tricky part. Maybe we're going to scrap it twice. Throw a number on that. We're not going to scrap it 10 times. If we're going to scrap it twice, we're going to tell the customer something else has to change. And then a lot of the times, to be candid, I'll tell the customer up front when I quote it, I reserve the right to cancel this job. This is a hard part. We're going to talk about it. We're going to meet. I'm going to show you what we're up against here. We can talk about design changes. But at the end of the day, this technology, our experience is limited, and we'll give it a go. We reserve the right to punt it back and say, hey, you know what? This isn't, you're not winning and we're not winning. And if nobody's winning, we're going to move on.
And out of curiosity, how often has that happened? Can you count on one hand, or?
It came really close on the part that I'm telling you about. Really close. That job started before Texas Metal Printing got acquired. So this was October of 19.
Yeah.
And I delivered it 3 weeks ago.
Oh,
so we went all of 2020 and into 21 before I delivered that part. Wow. It was hard. It was a tough part, man.
Yeah.
But they knew there was nobody else was going to stick it out. Like that stick-to-itiveness thing, like we communicated the whole way. Like
you saw it through.
We tried again and we wrecked again, and here's what we're going to do to try to fix it. And so that's where it's easy to, I could have easily punted it back and said, hey, you know what, we've got to, I put it, if we even try to run this part, here's our non-refundable X amount. If we put it up and we hit go, we're going to get paid this. And then we basically get to decide if we're going to go forward or not, because this part, now this is the one, instance where I came close to having to bail out because it was so hard. It hardly ever comes up in conversation.
Right.
But it gives me the confidence going in, going, look, man, if I don't like it, I'll kick it back. Like, it's a hard part. We're going to talk to these engineers. We're going to make it very clear that this is a very difficult thing to do. And we're going to ask for their help. Hey, if you just take this little feature right here, what if we blah, 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 round this corner, make this radius bigger or smaller? Do you have to have this? And things that are so challenging to us, they go, oh yeah, we can move that, no problem. Doo, doo, doo. And it's just being able to communicate that and work through it and go, man, that makes my life a lot easier. That's
And
really
that,
good to know.
what is the strangest thing you've been asked to print so far?
So there was a surgical tool that spreads out the gaps in your disc.
Hmm.
This is out there on the market, but it's made traditionally, and we had an inquiry to make a version of that. It just that was like weird and terrifying, and I have a very close personal friend of mine who was involved in that, and he has back problems, and he's, dude, I don't ever want to see one of those ever again, like because it looked like this
Little
medieval
PTSD.
type torture device, man, that just like the
Right.
spring loaded kind of thing that just you stick it in, you spread, and you do your thing, and it's like, oh.
That's funny. That's funny. So this last section I want to jump to, and since I got you here last week, I like to pull up 2 or 3 current events and see how different people are using a 3D printing and additive in the industry today. Last week, we actually brought up an article that KFC is 3D printing their chicken nuggets. Very interesting article. We have a link to, you can see it, but it's a all plant-based chicken nugget, and they're 3D printing it. And then we also saw where researchers are using the 3D printing for COVID testing. They're actually printing human organs and everything. They're skipping the standard 3 to 10 year processes for testing medicine to help in COVID by using 3D printing. So there was a couple interesting things last week. This week, I shared with you they're 3D printing new skin to help burn victims. Again, manufacturing guys like you and I, this is different stuff, but ScienceDaily.com talks about a new handheld 3D printer that deposits sheets of skin to cover large burn wounds. And its bio ink can accelerate the healing process. Device developed by a team of researchers at the University of Toronto Engineering and Sunnybrook Hospital. Again, we got a link there, but that's pretty interesting, eh? Getting skin
Oh man,
grafts.
yeah, it brings me back when anything medical. I flash back. I don't know if you remember. There's a Grey's Anatomy episode about 3 or 4 years ago, probably 3 years ago, where 3D printing was real big, and they needed a sternum for this patient, and so they found a way to print one out of, I think it was titanium.
The next interesting thing, and you commented on this when I shared it with you, is the article says, would you buy a 3D printed house? So on bobvila.com, there's an article that asks the question, would you buy a 3D printed house? It says, take a peek inside the first of its kind to hit the real estate market. The same technology used in small 3D printers can print a real house. The first 3D printed home is already on the multi-list. 3-dimensional printing isn't just for little things. SQ4D, which they pronounce S squared, is a New York construction company using patent pending 3D technology known as the Autonomous Robotic Construction System, or ARCS, to print houses on site. So the basics behind 3D printing a home, nearly identical to those using 3D printers to create other items, took just 48 hours of concrete extrusion over 8 days to complete the entire frame. That's amazing to me. Making a house, you and I are talking about gears and your combustion chamber and medical tools, but a concrete house, that sounds pretty cool.
Yeah, man, real estate kind of got me into 3D printing, and now it's like 3D printing could help encourage me to do more in real estate for years. And so the challenge here is affordable housing. To find a place to live is extremely challenging because everything's so expensive. And so that's where I get excited about this. And there's another one that's based out of Austin, Texas, that they got a house built and permitted in the city of Austin, which has strict standards. It's all about time and materials. If you can drive down the time and the materials to build a house, you're going to have a more affordable house. And if 3D printing can help do that, man, that's cool.
So this is from 3dprint.com. Again, a full link to the article on our page, 3dfromnothing.com. It says an Indian space startup, going to struggle with that name, but Agnicol Cosmos has developed test fired a fully 3D printed rocket engine produced as a single component in one run. Higher stage semi-cryogenic liquid propulsion engine called the Anglenet. Even though several space agencies and companies are using additive manufacturing, or AM, to churn out rocket parts and rocket engines, most notably SpaceX, Relativity Space, and NASA, Anglico claims that the Anglenet is the first single-piece 3D printed rocket engine to pass a fire test successfully. Igniters, injectors, cooling channels, mounts, manifolds for the fuel, oxygen, and nozzle are just a few of the hundreds of components that go into making a rocket engine. Moreover, most of these are incredibly complex geometries. However, AM, additive manufacturing, is helping to reduce the lead time and the cost that go into making this engine. So to me, that's pretty cool.
Everybody's going to space now. So that's
yeah, I don't know what's up there.
Engines to get there. Yeah. Must be something.
I guess there's a reason. I guess there's something going on up there that we need to check out and keep.
There's less people up there, which that's exciting.
I've gotten a good authority. There's no COVID on the moon. So they've not, one of the few places that there's, I think there's still a mask policy, but that doesn't have to do with COVID. But hey, Brandon, I really appreciate you spending the time with us today. It's so good to talk to you. Yeah. And I really wish you the best. If you want to give our listeners here a way that they can get a hold of you, what's the best place they can go to find you?
Yeah, me personally, I'm on LinkedIn, and then tmp3d.com will help you if you're interested in generating an RFQ there, or alliedpg.com. That's Allied Power Group's website, which is gas turbine repair. But yeah, man, thanks. This is fun. I wish you the best, and hope it's a blessing for everybody.
Absolutely. Thanks again for your time today.
All right, man. Have a good one.